Welcome everyone to the Electric School Bus Network National Forum, Purchasing with Sourcewell. Today we have Mike Doman here. We also have a few folk from CALSTART. Mike, I'll let you do an introduction in a few minutes, just sort of saying your name right now, getting everyone familiar with you. And I have two monitors set up, so if you think that I'm looking at not you, I'm in fact looking at the slides. Hopefully everyone can see those. Rachel, can you give me a thumbs up that you can see those? I know you already said yes, but I want to make sure I'm not. Cool, perfect, thank you. All right, so the forum agenda for today is we're going to start out with an introduction to the Electric School Bus Network for the folk that are new here. We're going to do a federal funding update. We're going to then have a presentation about purchasing with Sourcewell from Mike Doman. We're going to do a Q&A with Mike Doman, and then we're going to do a summary and closing. So really quickly, the Electric School Bus Network accelerates nationwide school bus fleet electrification through peer-to-peer networking and dialogue-driven forum meetings. That would be us right now. For school districts, advocacy organizations, government organizations, and industry representatives. And we provide a place to access educational tools, resources, and subject matter experts. That would be Mike, to help support the electric school bus fleet transition. And we are in partnership with California HVIP on this. Doing a little meet the team. We have Rachel. Rachel, you can wave. We have Katie. Katie, you can wave. I actually can't see if we have anybody else from CalSTART here. But I think that might be it for the moment. I'm like skimming through the guest list. We do have Liza, who helps put this together, and she will be hopping on at some point soon. But this is the school bus team. A little bit about CalSTART. We have a New York Northeast office, a Michigan Midwest office. We have a San Joaquin Valley regional office, and then we have our headquarters in Pasadena. If you are passing through Pasadena, let us know. We can offer you some coffee. The ESB network forum meetings were previously called working groups, but we're now calling them forums for a reason that we will not be discussing here. It might have been a copyright infringement. It might have not been a copyright infringement. They are not webinars. The idea is that it's not going to be a 45-minute lecture, but instead we want to hear what you all have to say. And we're essentially just trying to open up a conversation as opposed to telling you all how this works. We think it's important that there are questions from school districts, because if one school district has a question, probably 10 other school districts, 5 other school districts on the call all have that same other question. And our goal is essentially to ease the transition and to help electrify school bus fleets nationwide. We're facilitating conversations, we're providing up-to-date information, and we're also inviting independent and third-party partners. There are we formerly had 3 different forums, and we now have 2 different forums. We have the National Forum and the California Forum. The National Forum is every other month on the 2nd Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So today is an every other month, and it is the 2nd Wednesday of that every other month, and it is 2 p.m. Eastern time. The California Forum is every other month on the 1st Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Just giving everyone a run through quickly. We're going to move over to federal funding opportunity updates. And the EPA FY22, FY23 Dear NOFO is now open. That would be the Diesel Emission Reductions Act National Grants Notice of Funding Opportunity. The EPA is anticipating awarding about $115 million. The deadline for submitting questions is Friday, November 10th. My understanding is that that would be this Friday, and that is at noon. And the application deadline itself is December 1st at 11:59 p.m. And I said noon, but it's actually midnight. The EPA Clean School Bus Program 2023 rebates are also now open. The rebates program replaces school buses with cleaner zero emissions models. This program has unique requirements and procedures distinct from previous EPA rebate programs. Review the program guide for details. 2023 rebates application deadline is January 31st, 2024 at 4 p.m. We're now going to move over to purchasing with Sourcewell with Mike Dillman. Mike, I'm going to let you start out with an introduction. I know Mike has a slideshow, so I believe I'm going to stop slideshow sharing and let Mike do first an introduction and then take over.
So hopefully that worked for everybody to share my
That did work, Mike. We're seeing your screen.
And we'll take that off there. So hello, everyone. My name is Mike Doman from Sourcewell. I'm a Sourcewell supplier development administrator at Sourcewell. And so I want to thank CALSTART for inviting Sourcewell here today to talk a little bit about cooperative purchasing, right? And I see I can't back up too much because the sun's coming in. We actually have sun here in Minnesota, believe it or not. It does happen once in a while. So kind of what I wanted to talk about today is cooperative purchasing. And for the audience on here today, if we have some transportation directors or those involved in school districts that work with transportation, cooperative purchasing might be one way you can get what you need, i.e. example, school buses, EV chargers, papers, pencils, whatever it may be. Cooperative purchasing is just a choice. So I'm going to go through some slides here today and tell you a little bit about Sourcewell, tell you a little bit about some of the solutions that we have that you may be able to access. Should work. There we go. So kind of what on the agenda is what is cooperative purchasing? Why should I be interested in cooperative purchasing? And then all important is what do I do next, right? So ultimately, cooperative purchasing comes in many different forms. It's just that might not be the way you think of it, right? So if you utilize a state contract, that is really a form of cooperative purchasing, right? You may use one district may go out for something and you may piggyback, so to speak, on that contract. That is cooperative purchasing also. And then a national contract, much like Sourcewell. Why you should be interested in this is it will go through some things on where we don't skip any processes. It's just your choice. The school district or city and county are still in charge of the way they want to procure. And kind of the next steps on how do you get started? Where do you look? What kind of solutions does Sourcewell have? So that's kind of what we'll go through here today. So ultimately, as a school district, city, county, government agency, let's just put it that way, right? You have two decisions. What are you going to buy and how are you going to buy it? That's what it comes down to. What are you going to buy is typically going to be the transportation director. We need a school bus. We need EV chargers, right? What are you going to buy? What are we going to buy? I know I need 2 more school buses this year. I want them to be electric. That is what we need. That is all on you, possibly even working with a supplier or a vendor out there saying, what do you have as an electric option, electric solution? That's all on the districts, cities, and counties, etc. How are you going to buy it, right? That's where you as a transportation director or point of contact, right? I know I need 2 school buses. Now, how are we going to buy them? Is it going to be through the traditional bid process, like many of you have done? Is it going to be through a cooperative contract? Is it going to be through a state contract? What have you? How are we going to buy that? Those are conversations that we always say as transportation directors, for example, you have those conversations with your procurement departments. That's really what it comes down to is what are you going to buy? What are we going to buy and how are we going to buy it? So cooperative purchasing, the benefits of cooperative purchasing, right? I am a public employee. I'm not a state of Minnesota employee. I'm just a public employee. Sourcewell is a .gov. So when we go out for solicitations or RFPs, we have a process that we need to follow. Welcome to government, right? Process compliance, compliance and process. I could say that time and time again, but that's what we have to do. So cooperative purchasing, some of the benefits is we provide a competitively solicited and awarded contracts. We go through our procurement process. We have a procurement team that evaluates the solicitations when we get those in. Then they award those suppliers in a certain category. One of the things that is a little bit different about Sourcewell cooperative purchasing is, as a school district, you may need an electric bus, right? Get the specs. It's spec based. You're putting your specs together. You're putting that bid out on the street. That's how you do it. We are solution based. I'll get into this a little bit later, but when suppliers respond to us, typically we want school buses, gas, diesel, electric, whatever comes out, whatever new technology comes out next, we want the manufacturer to respond with those. It's where a little bit different is. Cooperative purchasing creates those efficiencies and savings. Main one is time. Purchasing departments, procurement departments typically don't have as many people as they did 5-10 years ago. They don't have the time to go out for every one of those bids out there. They don't necessarily have the expertise with all the new technology coming on board. So those are the efficiencies and savings that it creates. You get what you need when you need it. We need a school bus. We have to go out and buy a school bus. We can look to cooperative purchasing to say, hey, we want to work with that manufacturer, that local dealer, and buy that school bus, right? There's still a process you have to go through. Your procurement's still going to vet the contract. They're still going to look at the language. But now that whole RFP or solicitation process has been satisfied. Another big component of this, we talk relationships at Sourcewell all the time. It enables you as a school district, you as a city or county, whoever you represent, it enables you to work with your local supplier, a local dealer. In most cases, there's always exceptions to that. With having over 600 contracts, not every one of those work exactly in that fashion. So we talk about procurement, and that's, they make the final decisions if you can use cooperative purchasing or not, because as an agency, you have to abide by your local rules, your state rules, your county rules, whatever you have, right? Your school district rules. But typically we look at equipment. Like, we're just going to talk equipment right now, bigger equipment, school buses, right? Big trucks, big chassis, those type of things. That typical procurement process can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months, right? It can be 3 to 6 months long. And what don't you have at the end of that process? You don't have your piece of equipment yet. You don't have your school bus yet. Now then they have to order it. So we look at, one of the things is you just take a look at that. I call it the traditional bid process. One thing that a school district has to do, we're going to use school buses, right? You have to identify your need. We need 2 school buses this year. We want them to be electric. That's not going to change if you're using Sourcewell or if you're going to go out to bid. That still stays the same. You're going to have discussions with your procurement saying, we need 2 electric buses. Do you know how to go out to bid? Can we use a contract? Typical ways: you develop scope, advertise, proposal open, evaluation, etc. You find the issue, appeal once you get through that protest period, once you know who it is. By purchasing through Sourcewell, once again, you still have to identify that need. That's crucial. It's just, there's no magic wand, right? When you use Sourcewell, you got to identify the need. We want 2 electric school buses. You want to discuss cooperative purchasing, with your procurement. Then you want to start vetting and looking at some of those Sourcewell contracts. This case, school buses. Now you can go to your school boards. You can have a conversation if they're the final determination saying we want to use a Sourcewell contract to buy these 2 electric buses. You can then issue the PO, and then we all know it does take some time right now. Welcome to supply chains. Cooperative purchasing has the exact same as just a regular bid. You receive your goods and services. That's kind of how the process works. It just compacts that overall procurement process. That typically would take I'm going to use 3 to 6 months, right, in that equipment world. Does it work? Cooperative purchasing does work. You can see on your screen over the last 5-6 years, you've seen significant growth. I think a lot of this comes from, just procurement teams not have, typically maybe they have 5 people on their team. Now they have 3 people on their team. Maybe they have 2 people on their team. New technologies, you're buying new things out there, right? And procurement maybe doesn't have all the knowledge, or is a learning process, right? So that's why cooperative sales, or cooperative contract sales, are growing, and you're seeing more suppliers be awarded contracts and really use that method or that pathway for you to buy. So that's kind of the trend that we see. So I kind of want to just go in here and just kind of pull some things out, and I'll talk about our process as I go through this. But when I talk with CALSTART, I just want to kind of extract some of the contracts that you might be interested in for this presentation today. So let's just take a category: school buses. Sourcewell went out for a category for school buses. Once again, it's solution based, so they can respond with any gas, diesel, electric, hydrogen, whatever they may have, propane. Typically, it comes with every option that they have. And in most cases, Sourcewell likes to award at the manufacturer level, so they can then roll it out to all of their dealers or distributors nationwide. Hence, so you can buy local. I mentioned that earlier. Not all dealers will take advantage of that right away. But typically, they say, yes, we want to, because school district A came to us and wants to buy 10 electric buses. We want that business. So that's kind of how we did it. Our procurement team evaluates that. They score it. By the way, it's a 1,000-point scale, and 400 of that is pricing. So pricing is 40% of the overall evaluation. Kind of sounds like for you, for those of you who are in procurement, you do the same thing on your side, right? You go through the specs, you evaluate. If they meet them, great. If they don't, you throw them out. So here's our school bus awards: Bluebird, IC, Lion, and Thomasville. Of course, we know Lion's electric, but all of them have an electric solution on their contract. All of these is you would go through a local dealer or dealer in these cases and work through them. Every one of our, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but I kind of want to kind of frame kind of how this is all put together. Each of these awarded suppliers has a dedicated page on our website. It's called a landing page on sourcewell-mn.gov, right? There's that .gov website. All the contract documents are out there. All the contact information is out there. Your procurement's going to want to see those contract docs. They're all out there. You have questions about Bluebird. There's a number one that I put on there. There's a contact person at Bluebird that you can reach out to. Hey, who's our local dealer? Do they participate? I need more information on your electric bus. That's how the process works. Then each of these contracts are also assigned somebody at Sourcewell who also works for each of those. In my case, I work with Lion and Thomasville. If you had questions about Thomasville on the Sourcewell side of things, maybe some contract language, anything like that, I'm also on those landing pages, or one of my colleagues is on those landing pages. So that's just kind of, I just want to put that out. That's kind of how the process works. School buses are unique. I'm going to go out on a limb here, but it's not a very big limb, right? A lot of the school districts, transportation directors, buy buses in a certain way. They've not looked at cooperative purchasing. Some may have. So it could be, we're finding out that getting in front of transportation directors at school districts is something that they're open to, saying, we've never thought that that's how we can buy a school bus. Another big advantage of this in cooperative purchasing is if you have Thomas-built buses, or if you have IC bus, right? By using the cooperative contract, you know you're going to get an IC bus. You know you're going to get a Thomas-built bus. If you leave it up to bid, you may get some other type of bus if they meet those specs. Now, I know most procurement's pretty darn good at what they do with school buses, so they're typically really good at still getting the same bus. But I just want to point that out also. Along with buses, we talked a little bit about electric vehicle supply equipment, right? EVSE, charging stations, charging infrastructure, installation of all these is a topic that I hear all the time. My main point of contacts are fleet directors, fleet managers, transportation directors, right? You can't get the vehicle right now. The bus is taking a long time to get. What should we do? I would suggest you focus on your infrastructure. You're going to have to focus on it sooner or later anyhow. These are our awarded suppliers in this category. It was a very robust category. So to let you know, you may be thinking, boy, Sourcewell awarded quite a few in this category. I want to say there were 49 responses in this category, and we awarded these ones that are currently on the slide. ChargePoint, of course, is the biggest one, but all of these have different things that they bring to the table. When a school district would reach out to myself and say, Mike, could you tell us a little bit about each of these? I can, but typically what we do is we send you a link out saying, you kind of look at the ones you're interested in, reach out to them, because when it comes to that EVSC, that type of equipment, it usually is a more complex discussion because it's more of a project, right? How many do I need? What side of the street do I need to put them on? What side of the garage do I need to put them on, right? Are we building a depot? That type of discussion. So we really tell the agencies to reach out to the supplier and ask those questions, because then they can go back and forth and you're obligated to buy nothing, right? You can still get that information and go through it. So I wanted to throw out those contracts. So you got a chance to see those. Along with that is we always, there's probably, 3 questions that you ask, or decisions. What are we going to buy? How are we going to buy it? And how we're going to pay for it. We should probably add that one, as Ian talked a little bit about, federal monies, right? Grants, rebates, et cetera, that are out there. I just want to go through quickly some of our awarded suppliers and kind of the financing leasing world. Okay. So the first one is financing, and it's tax exempt leasing, and NCL government capital. I forgot the word capital on there, but NC government capital is our awarded supplier in this category. They will be able to lease, finance, whatever the word is, right? In your finance, people can work with them, and they talk the language, right? They talk that language. They can do just about anything. So school buses, turf fields, lawnmowers, anything. They work with all of our current suppliers, and they can work with other suppliers that you may be looking at also. The reason why we went out for this tax exempt leasing is in some states, when you buy a school bus, for instance, and now you want to lease the school bus, the leasing portion also needs to be under contract, or you need to go out to bid for that. It's not the case in every state, and it might be different for school districts versus cities or counties. But I just bring that up there because a lot of times we see, especially school districts, if they're going through a sustainability plan, they want to add EV buses. EV buses aren't quite as cheap as the traditional buses, right? I'm not telling you that you don't know, right? So don't fall off your chairs that I told you something there, but you may be wanting to buy 2 of them, and it's not just going to fit in your capital budget, right? But if you do a tax exempt leasing or that form, maybe you could buy those 2 and still have capital monies to buy, EV charging or whatever you have in your transportation department. So just kind of give you an example of that. We see a lot of that lately over the last couple years, where traditionally they have not leased. Now they're at least looking into it to free up some capital monies. Then we have our fleet management category. So enterprise, D&M, element, merchants, and home and ARI. I put these on here because this isn't so much for school buses, but if you're buying anything else electric, most of these companies will have, if they have it available from the OEM's manufacturer, right, will be able to work with you with a leasing mechanism. Lease to own, right, is one of those, to get those type of vehicles. So maybe you want a electric light duty truck, or just electric car to run around, the district or whatnot. Those are also out there, and it's under our fleet management category, because when we originally went out for this category, it was, you're going to come in here. It's going to sound bad on this one. It's like, you can change your oil. You can change your tires. You can do all this kind of maintenance work. Well, that they've all adapted now that electric has come into some of their offerings too. So I just want to point that out there also. I also want to point out, since we're on this slide too, as Ian mentioned it, because a question will come up, trust me, is can we use grants? Can we use whatever those monies are out there and utilize and buy a school bus off of a Sourcewell contract? Typically the answer is it depends. But most of the case you can. If it's any EPA funding, they called out cooperative purchasing rate in there, you're good to go. Others usually, typically, it will say in the grant that you have if you can use cooperative purchasing or rebate monies or anything. But most of the time, our suppliers work with you and utilize that also, especially if it's anything, for your tax incentives. Typically, you go through a lease or something like that to take advantage of those. So I just want to mention that too. I think it's really important that some of those monies can be used with Sourcewell contracts. So we had a brand new category. So if you look back, if I went back to that other one, fleet management, one of the things, since times are changing, that they didn't have was specifically talking about how do we manage electrification. This is a brand new category for us. So I'm still learning. Sourcewell's still learning. We're all still learning, but it's a brand new category. So we went out and kind of, even though enterprise, for example, can, you can lease an electric, light duty vehicle. What about other things? What about electrification, transition planning, management, consultation, something like that? So we went out with fleet electrification, transition planning, and management. So you can see the awardees on here. Most of these are all, they're consultants, right? They will work with you. They'll work with your sustainability person on how to put together a plan. We just wanted to take a look at that. Some also will offer the equipment, right? The actual solution you need, i.e. a school bus. So just taking that in that Highland Electric, for example, it's my contract. I worked with them. I launched them. They will be able to help you with your school bus, with your EV charging, among other things, and also consult with you and go through that transition planning. That's just one example. Another example is just In Charge Energy. I'm pretty sure they have solar charging. So if you wanted a solar charger and you want to know how to put it in and kind of plan for that, like In Charge would be an example of one. One of the things is I don't go through all these. I don't pick one supplier over the other because we are .gov. Sourcewell doesn't do any selling. We don't sell anything. We try to provide you with as much information so you can make those choices as you go forward. So kind of a brand new category we're excited about. I think Liza will be sending out some links to their landing pages too. I gave her that. So kind of just, so you don't have to go out to the web. We would love you to go out to the Sourcewell website and search all kinds of different contracts, but kind of found a shortcut for you too. So a couple of additional categories that you may be interested in is those telematics, those fleet management technologies, some of those that we have. I didn't want to keep putting page after page of these in here for you. But those are also out there. How far does the school bus go, and taking a look at that start stop technology. Parts. So there are some OEM parts out there. There's some aftermarket parts, vehicle lifts if you use those, and garage equipment, tools. And I also put fuel dispensing solutions on here. That's also changing, right? Because a lot of them are also looking towards electric also, and not just could be fuel dispensing, but electric dispensing or that's solutions. Those are starting to creep into that category also. Tires, we have one contract for tires right now. And then I mentioned earlier, we do have a passenger vehicle contract. It is not an OEM, so it's not a Ford, Chevy, GMC type contract. It's a dealer group that also does have, electric or alternative fuel offerings. So just a couple things before I start wrapping up here is, what are some of the advantages of Sourcewell? Once again, we satisfy that competitive solicitation requirements. We do not skip them. If you guys were all suppliers on the other side of the screen, I would have said this 50 times, because they love to go in front, for example, the transportation director, and say, buy our school bus, because you can skip that process. You can skip that bid process. The poor transportation director goes down the hallway up the stairs to procurement and says, let's use the Sourcewell contract. We can skip the procurement process. Well, they get kicked out of that room so darn quick. It's like, you can't skip the process. You have to satisfy the process. We're also a .gov, so that's why, Sourcewell has to go through a process to award contracts, just like school districts, cities, counties, and states. So that's a big point too. If you ever have questions on the contracts, the suppliers they're selling you something, right? But if you ever have questions on the contracts, there's dedicated people you can reach out to on our team. And it's kind of like that government to government talk track. So quick email, phone responses. Sometimes, we all go to shows and I can't get back to somebody for 2 days, and I apologize profusely, and they all go, well, that's the quickest anybody's ever got back to me. So we kind of pride ourselves because we have our supplier development team, and we also have a client relations team. So each of our contracts has an assigned point of contact, as do the states out there in our client relations teams. So we have a client relations team that's been built out. Some of them work with, in Minnesota, they'll work with K-12, and it might be the whole Midwest. So we have some of that too. And then our accessible website, it's pretty easy to use, self-explanatory. I'll take you through a few things quickly of that. We've also launched a new experience online. It's probably a year and a half, maybe a little, just under 2 years. Let's put it that way. You go to that landing page that I talked about on our .gov website. You'll see a place for the agent. This is for agencies only, right? School districts. You can register or create an account there. It takes you to our, we call it Buy Sourcewell site. Better search functions. Suppliers have put, information on their brochures and that. And there's also some online purchasing. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure you're not going to go out there and click and buy a school bus. Not the point of that, but there might be some of the office supplies, some of those, Phi-Ed type things, right? Basketballs and all that you can buy right on there. So I just point that out because that's kind of the way we're going. Just kind of a new experience for our clients, meaning the agencies. So kind of one of the things, the next steps, and I'll wrap up here is, Sourcewell, the contracts are for government and education agencies. That's who's buying off those contracts, and also nonprofits if they so choose. It's those agencies that go through a process to buy something. Those are really who's going to be buying out the Sourcewell contracts. I should have said that probably in the first slide, but we'll get to it. So what are your next steps? Once again, you're going to decide what you need. I need an electric school bus in this case. You can go to the Sourcewell website. You can search. You can choose the suppliers. You can request quotes. As transportation directors or whomever does it, you're going to have some of your specs already that you need, right? You give those to the dealers. They will give you a quote off of the Sourcewell pricing on their contract. You can do that directly with your local supplier, dealer, or sales rep in your area for those contracts. Our website's pretty easy to navigate to go out there also. And then you make your purchase. Most of the time that PO will go right to the dealer. So even though Thomas Built holds the contract, they talk to their dealer network in their contract, and that PO will go right to the dealer. So that's kind of the next steps on, it's kind of just go out to our website, do some searching, do some exploring. You have any questions, you can always reach out to myself. And I'm located on some of those landing pages also. So just wanted to provide you that information. And that is the end of my presentation. And I think we'll try to take some questions.
Yeah, we actually have a few in the chat. One being, are the scores of different suppliers available publicly?
Yes. Awesome question. You caught me on that. I should have said that actually. On that landing page is all of those contract documents. So the actual contract that the supplier filled out, the evaluation on how each one of those scored. So you can go through on that 1,000-point scale. You can see how they scored on pricing, how they scored on marketing, how they scored on warranty, depth and breadth, right? We want multiple solutions for the agencies out there. That's kind of what national contracts are. So yes, that is absolutely, and you're going to want to. So if you're the transportation director, you're going to want to link to that landing page to provide to your procurement team, because they're going to want to take a look at that.
Okay. How often do the prices change?
How often do the pricings change? Boy, if you asked this question prior to 3 years ago, I would say roughly about once a year, right? Now, depending on the category, it may be multiple times a year. So a supplier can go through a process, or you go to process again. They can't just randomly change their pricing, but they can go through a process through Sourcewell. Has to be approved by, for instance, in my contracts, it has to be approved by me first. Then it goes up to our director to be approved. And that process is for pricing changes. So of course, we don't see this a lot right now, but it could be for decreases, increases, or if they're adding a new model. They're able to add a new model. In this case, if one of those 4 suppliers did not have an electric school bus and it just became available, they're able to add them to the contract. It's been, with COVID and with supply chain issues, suppliers a little bit harder to hold their prices for a year. But there is a process that they have to go through, and they have to provide, support and documentations on why they're going to do that. I always said prior to 2 years ago, because inflation was 2%. So typically when you've seen a 1 to 2% increase each year, maybe they added a new model and that was a 4% increase, right? So yes, there's a process.
Okay. Have you considered contracts for repowered electric school buses?
Repowered electric school buses. My guess is if there are suppliers who do that, I don't know enough about that one, I guess. My guess is it's probably not the bus. It's something somebody can help me out here. Is it something that you do to the bus to make it?
Potentially either one. Potentially you could buy a fully repowered school bus, or potentially you could pay for the service of having your school bus repowered.
Sure. So if there was a supplier who did the repower, they absolutely could respond to that school bus solicitation. They might have a little bit harder time when we talk depth and breadth, different, models and that kind of stuff, but they could do that. We do get a lot of inquiries about, hey, we have a school bus already, we want to repower it, or I have a truck and I want to do this to it. Those contracts, I call them upfits, right? We're changing the actual school bus, or we're changing the actual truck. A little bit harder in the cooperative world. We're working on that. We've not been as successful because it's just tough because there's a lot of them out there. That's the only thing. So in your repower question, could they go up against or respond with the OEMs or manufacturers and get awarded? There's a possibility, but it might be a little bit harder, right? Now, one of the OEMs, if one of the OEMs did it, don't know if they do that, right? They could add that as an option or a service on their contract.
Okay. Yeah, there was a follow-up question to that too, which was, how does Sourcewell start the process for IDing a new supplier category?
Sure. So we have a category development team. We have a lot of teams. We've grown a lot in the last 5 years. So we have a category development team. There's 4 people in that right now. 5, I think. We just hired a director in that one. So in my business unit is Public Works and Fleet. We have a person assigned to us. So when those type of contracts go out, school buses, class 4 through 8 chassis are coming up. That'll be hitting the street, so to speak, beginning of 2024-ish. They work with those suppliers. They work with new suppliers. If you go out to our .gov website, you can view solicitations. We have a procurement portal. They answer any questions you have. You go and register for that procurement portal. This is for suppliers now only, not agencies, right? You go out there and you register for the procurement portal. That's how you get notified when that RFP goes out. On the agency side, by the way, I should have mentioned, you can go out to the .gov website. There's registration right on the front page. By the way, there's no cost for agencies, school districts to utilize Sourcewell contracts. 0 cost and no obligation to buy. You registered, you get a number, so then you're in our system. And when you ever buy anything off of the contract, because those suppliers have to report those sales to us, then you're in our system. Kind of a nice way in case you ever get audited. We're there to help because we can look in our system to say, hey, school district A did buy 2 electric school buses last year. So,
okay. So just to confirm, there is no cost to accessing Sourcewell contracts.
There's no cost to access Sourcewell contracts, right? Most suppliers respond with a discount off of MSRP or some sort of their government discount. For the agencies, there are no cost.
Okay, this is a multi-step question. So what kind of procurement code governs Sourcewell? Is it Minnesota state or something else? I assume you do low bid plus responsive bidder. I'm curious if you're able to do best value contracting.
Yes. So since we're based in Minnesota, we use Minnesota, procurement law. In the state of Minnesota, I'm not going to go into the statutes because those are not as fun, right, for anybody. But there's a statute that set up Sourcewell, and there's 8 other of us in Minnesota. There's 23 different directives. One of those directives is to go out and do cooperative purchasing. It's as deep as I'm going to get on that. That's the statute. It's enabling legislation that gives us the power to do that. How we do it is best value, right? It is best value contracts, because we're not IFB, invitation for bid, where school buses might be a bad example, where you're going out to bid an electric school bus. You're going through all the specs that they meet. If the first 3 didn't meet them, you throw them out and you look at that one. Or if all 4 of them met the specs, you look at one thing and one thing only, it's low price. And that's where you have to go if they meet the specs. We don't do that. We don't set all of those. I think I said 49 in EDSE. You don't set those side by side. Our procurement team evaluates the first supplier, sets it aside, scores it, second supplier, and then they go and they look for that natural break. So it is best value, pricing just being 40% of that best value. Hopefully I didn't muddy the water too much there.
Yeah, those were all the questions in the chat. So if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to unmute.
By the way, those are good questions. They're really good questions. Typically I have to ask those questions to myself, but those are really good questions.
Okay, we had another one pop up. Can an entity in any state take advantage of Sourcewell?
It depends. You're gonna hear it depends quite a lot. It's not that we're trying to run around anything, but we always leave it up. If an agency called me up and said, Mike, can I utilize a school district and wherever, can I utilize your Sourcewell contract? Typically I'd say yes, but we leave it on the agencies to determine if they can use a Sourcewell contract or not, if they can use a cooperative contract or not. I'll give you an example. State of Mississippi right now, you cannot utilize a Sourcewell or a cooperative purchasing contract. The state has come out and said that. The threshold's very, very low on that. We've worked with them before, and we will continue to work with them to say we'd like your agencies in Mississippi to do that. Some states are a little bit harder than others. In some states, it's different between the school district and the city and county. So you're going to kind of want to know your local statutes and regulations. But for the most part, the answer to that is yes.
Okay, so can you tell us which Midwest states allow their school districts to use Sourcewell for its bus purchases? They're particularly interested in Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Or it might be easier to say which states across the country do/do not allow.
Yeah, I don't know if, I think all of those ones you said do allow. I'd have to look back. One of the things too is if you're an agency, you want to reach out to us to see if there's a school district that utilizes a Sourcewell contract, right? In that specific state, we'll be able to tell you that. Because we don't just limit it to school buses, okay? Because typically if you buy something off of a Sourcewell contract, procurement teams are going to say, we've used it for that. It probably opens the door to buy a school bus then, right? A lot of states, so I'm going to give you a couple examples. State of Minnesota, by the way, I'm a school board member. I've been a school board member for 25 years. It may look like I've been it, but let me tell you, the last few years have been interesting. But in Minnesota, we're 70% contractors, right? So we're using contractors for our busing services. You go down to Iowa, if they flip it, right? It's 70% go out and buy their own buses. A lot of times also, states have school bus contracts. So that's where the districts are looking to buy through the state contract. It's Sourcewell is just another choice instead of a state contract or another cooperative contract. If the state only has a contract for one certain type of bus and you want to buy from another OEM or manufacturer, you might look to Sourcewell. Once again, it's all up to you. It's just different in the States. School buses, just so you know, the current contract that we're on is our first time going out for a national school bus contract. Before we partnered with a state down in the Southeast and just sold into that state. Our current school bus contract is on the street currently right now. Actually, it's just closed, so our procurement teams are evaluating that. And when we award, I should have said this too, when we award a supplier, we award them for 4 years. Okay, they're awarded for 4 years. We've added some plus ones on there if we need to, and that's at the request of the agencies. The agencies don't want us to be turning over all these contracts every year because it's just hard to buy. So I'd have to get a little more in depth on that question on the certain states. But we could definitely answer that
Okay.
with a little bit more information.
Yeah, there was another question about Massachusetts specifically, if you knew if they allowed purchasing from Sourcewell.
I don't know specifically if they do, but agencies in Massachusetts do buy off of Sourcewell contracts. I'm trying. This is where you can't quote me on some of this stuff because I don't know all 50 states and all statutes and all that. But in Massachusetts, a lot of times to utilize a Sourcewell contract, they require you go with a dealer that's domiciled in Massachusetts, right? So that's typically how Massachusetts works.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I just one other thing to that is each state will have some procurement code. Sourcewell doesn't. You as agencies need to follow that procurement code. It wouldn't be something that Sourcewell would follow, right? You would do it, would follow that procurement code, being an agency.
Okay, yeah. Someone else asked, are there other organizations /.govs that do what Sourcewell does?
Yes, but not typically on a national level because we do a national level and in Canada if the supplier chooses to do Canada. There are others like us. We typically don't say whether our competitors because it's just a choice. It's just a choice. And our position is choice is good. Choice is really good, right? You can choose from different ways to buy stuff. We are in state of Minnesota set us up this way as a .gov. You don't just go out and sign up for .gov. GSA gives you that, and you have to be a public agency to do that. There are others out there. I'll give you an example of one is AMIA. AMIA holds national contracts, but what they do is they will reach out. They don't just reach out. They have a couple, right? So a certain county will do their school bus bid, RFP, whatever it is, and that's who they use. So they use a lead agency to kind of do their categories. Since Sourcewell is a .gov, we are our own lead agency, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can a state adopt the Sourcewell contract as their state contract for school buses?
Wow, these are great questions. The answer to that is yes, and it does happen, right? We see it quite a bit. We haven't seen it. School buses, I think the only I shouldn't do that because it's wrong to do because it's different. Here's what will happen. The answer to the question is yes, a state can reach out and adopt it, the contract. If they want to do that, they typically would reach out to Sourcewell. We provide them with every document that they need, right? Whatever that supplier responded to us, we send it to them. Then they reach out to the supplier, and it's really between the supplier and the state to reach an agreement because the state most likely has additional terms and conditions to add if they want to adopt to it, which is allowable under the Sourcewell contract. It's another big thing, key, that you can allow additional terms and conditions. The state thus can adopt that contract. Sometimes they adopt the whole category, so they don't pick and choose. So example, they might just adopt all the school buses in that category or just one of the suppliers. And then it's considered a state contract, which then there should be zero questions if you can utilize it or not. It still starts with a Sourcewell contract, but they can adopt it.
Okay. The next one might be an emailable answer because it's quite long, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. Are there any avenues for EV infrastructure companies to work with Sourcewell? The website mentions that companies have to wait for a relevant RFP to be posted to be able to apply, but they didn't see any relevant ones for EV charging and infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing here for a minute. I probably should have did that so you don't look at my face on the screen. Because the reason why I'm going to do that is I got to get to my my computer. So in that case, if this is a supplier side question, right? It is. So we go out to RFP every 4 years. Typically, it's a little less than that because we don't want any gap for charging infrastructure, right? So I'm going to give you, since you mentioned EVSE, the maturity date of our EVSE is July 2025. My guess is at the end of 2024, the beginning, my guess is going to be the end of 2024, Sourcewell will then go out with an RFP for EVSE charging. That's kind of how the system works. If you're interested in that, you go to our website, you hit view solicitations at the top of our .gov website. It'll take you into the procurement portal. You can reach out to them saying, hey, I'm interested. If you are, you can also reach out to me. I can forward that onto our category development team. How it works is that team has discussions with potential suppliers, right, and current suppliers about an upcoming RFP, kind of taking you through the process. Because, you know, we work just like you as agencies would. We have, you know, we have quiet periods and when it's out there on the street, and quiet periods 15 days before. And so we go through all of that too. So you want to make sure you know that, because sometimes we'll have a supplier call me up and say, Mike, hey, I'd like to talk about the charging RFP that's out there. I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. Actually, no one can talk to you because it's on the street. So that's kind of how it works.
We have 2 more minutes for another question, and then I have 5 minutes that I want to do wrap up. So Katie, if you want to do one more question.
Okay, okay. Do you collect some kind of usage reports that allow you to track which agencies / buyers are using your contracts?
Yeah. So how the system works is we use Salesforce. When our agencies buy something, our suppliers have to report sales to us. That goes into our system, right? So an agency might want to just ask us what they purchased over the last year. So that's kind of how we work with it too. We also work with our current suppliers on some of that information also. But, you know, typically it's you know, if a supplier reached out to us and said, I want to see everything they did, they'd go through a data request. I mean, if it was out there, our current suppliers, you know, we have a method to do that, but we do compile all those sales, because once I said, if that agency ever gets audited, we want to make sure the auditor is either going to ask, did you bid it or did you buy it through a contract? So that's typically why that information goes in there.
Your sound isn't working, Ian. You're not on mute, but your sound isn't working.
Can we hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. I don't even know what I said. I was, Mike, I was thanking you for answering all of these questions, and I was saying that there do seem to be a lot more questions that are rolling out in the chat. It seems like there's a lot of interest in hearing about Sourcewell. Fortunately, Mike put his email address on the previous screen. We will be releasing the slides on Friday, so if you missed that, that'll be there. He also put, was that your home phone number? What phone number did you put there, Mike?
That phone number, that is my cell phone. So we work.
Wow.
Remote. So I know it.
Okay.
That's the life we live in government, right? So no, I'm kidding. No, but it's I'm more than happy to answer any questions. You know, if you're in the supplier side of things, I'm not going to answer those questions. I'll send you over to our category development team. But if you have any just to get you started, go ahead and email me. I'm not afraid of questions. We do it. That's what we do every single day. If I can't answer them, if it's about a certain different category too, I'll just send you the right person. So,
Mike, thank you so much for this, and hopefully folk will reach out to him. Really quickly, a few last things here. There is a resources link that you can access. This will be emailed out. This slideshow will be emailed out to folk on Friday of this week. So you can go ahead and click over here. A few non-Sourcewell related things. There will be a recording of the meeting. Like I said, the slide deck, as well as the Sourcewell links will go out on Friday. We are going to be sending out an ESB network newsletter on Tuesday, November 14th, which will include information about state funding. Mark your calendars for the next National Forum, Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. If you are not excited for New Year's Eve, perhaps you are excited for January 10th of 2024. And last but not least, please email schoolbusteam@calstart.org with any questions, and we should be able to answer those for you.